Hi, everybody. Hope you had a nice holiday. So, the story I want to share with you today is called Chicken Sunday. It's by Patricia Polacco. I chose this story because it has a very particular element in it, an art element that reminds me of some of the traditions that we do here in the United States as far as Easter. I know that in my house we dyed some Easter eggs yesterday when we celebrated Easter. Um, and they do this in different parts of the world, and some people do it differently. Now, Patricia Polacco, her grandmother and grandfather were from the Ukraine, and when they dyed eggs, they did it a little bit differently. Um, and they're called pisanki eggs. So, in this particular book, they reference the pisanki egg and how they make the eggs, and I think it's very interesting, so I always like to read her books this time of year. So this is called Chicken Sunday by Patricia Polacco. And some of the things you're going to hear in here are reference to where she's from. Like she calls her grandmother her babushka, which is Ukrainian for grandmother. So you'll hear a few other things that are um, particular for her from the Ukraine. So here is Chicken Sunday by Patricia Polacco. Stuart and Winston were my neighbors. They were my brothers by a solemn ceremony that we had performed in their backyard one summer. They weren't the same religion I was, they were Baptist. Their grandma, Eula May Walker, was my grandma now. My babushka, my grandmother, had died 2 summers before. Sometimes my mother let me go to church on Sunday with them. Oh, how we loved to hear Miss Eula sing. She had a voice like slow thunder and sweet rain. We'd walk to church and back, and she'd take my hand as we crossed College Avenue. Even though we've been churching up like decent folks ought to, she'd say, I don't want you to step out in front of one of those too fast cars. You'll be as flat as a hen's tongue. And she'd squeeze my hand. When we passed Mr. Kadinsky's hat shop, Miss Eula would always stop and look in the window at the wonderful hats. She'd sigh, and then we'd walk on. We called those Sundays Chicken Sundays because Miss Eula would almost always fry chicken for dinner. There'd be collard greens and bacon, big pot of hoppin' john, corn on the cob, and fried spoon bread. One Sunday at the table, we watched her paper fan flutter back and forth, pulling the moist chicken fried air along with it. She would take a deep breath. Her skin glowed as she smiled, and then she told us something we already knew. That Easter bonnet in Mr. Kadinsky's window is about the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, she said thoughtfully. The three of us exchanged looks. We wanted to get her that hat more than anything else in the whole world. Stuart reached into the hole of the trunk of our wishing tree in the backyard. He pulled out a rusty Band-Aid tin, and the three of us held our breath as we counted the money inside that we'd been saving for weeks. If we're going to get that hat for Miss Eula in time for Easter, we're going to need a lot more money than this, I announced. Maybe we could just ask Mr. Kadinsky if we could sweep up in his shop or something to earn the rest of the money, Stuart said. I don't know, Winnie said fearfully. He's such a strange old man. He never smiles. He always looks so mean. But we all agreed that it was worth the try anyway. The next day, we took a shortcut down the alley in the back of the hat shop. Bigger boys were already there. They were yelling, and eggs flew past us and pelted Mr. Kadinsky's back door. Just as the boys ran away, the door flew open. Mr. Kadinsky glared straight at us. You there, he yelled. Why do you kids do things like this? It wasn't us, Stuart tried to say. But Mr. Kadinsky wouldn't listen to us. All I want is to live my life in peace. I'm calling your grandmother, he shouted, and he wagged his finger in Stuart's face. Miss Eula was waiting for us in the living room. Miss Eula, we didn't throw those eggs, we sobbed. Some big boys did, Stuart sputtered. What were you doing in the back of his shop in the first place? She asked. We knew we couldn't tell her the truth, so we just stood there and we cried. She looked at us for a long time. Baby dears, I want to believe you. Heaven knows that I brought you children up to always tell the truth. So if you say you didn't do it, then I believe you. It's just too bad, though, she went on to say. That poor man has suffered so much in his life. He deserves more than to have eggs thrown at him. You know, he thinks you threw the eggs. You'll have to show him that you're good people. You'll have to change his mind somehow. In my kitchen the next day, we thought and thought, how can we win him over when he thinks that we threw those eggs? Stuart asked. He doesn't even like us, Winston chirped. Eggs, I said quietly. Eggs? Stuart asked. Yes, eggs, I screamed. I went to the kitchen drawer and took out a lump of beeswax, a candle, and a small funnel with a wooden handle, and a pack of yellow, red, and black dye. My mom my mom helped me show the boys how to decorate the eggs the way my bubby had taught me, the way they did it back in the old country, back in the Ukraine. We would make designs on the eggs shells with the hot wax, and then dye them and finally melt the wax patterns off. We put the eggs in the basket, and even though we were afraid, we marched into Mr. Kadinsky's shop and put them on the counter. And here they are, decorating their eggs. He raised his eyebrows and glowered at us. Then his eyes dropped to the basket. Spasiba, he said softly. That means thank you in Russian. Pisanki eggs, he said as he looked closely. I haven't seen these since I left my homeland. We didn't throw those eggs at your door, Mr. Kadinsky, we told him. He looked at us for a minute. Well then, you have great courage to be here. Chutzpah, he said. You have chutzpah. Then his eyes glistened and his mouth curled into a smile. Come, have some tea with me. And here's a picture of the pisanki eggs that they made for Mr. Kadinsky. We spent the whole afternoon talking together, having poppy seed cake and strong tea. He told us about his life. We told him about ours. We finally got the courage up to ask him about doing odd jobs to earn some extra money for the hat. He apologized and told us there was no work. We didn't tell him what we wanted the money for. It didn't seem like the right thing to do, but our hearts sank. I'll tell you this, he said thoughtfully. These eggs are as beautiful as any of my hats. Stuart, Winnie, and I looked at each other. You know, it's Easter. I'm sure that people would love these eggs. Set up a table and sell them right here in my shop. For the next few days, we worked very hard. We almost made a dozen pisanki eggs. When the people came in, they picked up the eggs and said things like beautiful, splendid, intricate, glorious. We sold them all in one single day. That afternoon, when all the eggs were gone, we counted our money. We had more than enough for the hat. Just as we were about to tell Mr. Kadinsky that we wanted to buy the hat, he came out from the back holding a beautiful hat box, gift wrapped. Keep your money, children, he said. I've seen Miss Eula admire this. It's for her, isn't it? Tell her that I know that you are very good children. Such good children. When Easter Sunday arrived, we thought our hearts would burst when we watched Miss Eula open the hat box. She held us close as big tears rolled down her cheeks. Our hearts sang along with the choir that Sunday. She looked so beautiful in that hat. When it was time for her solo, we knew she was singing for us. Her voice was like slow thunder and sweet rain. Later that day, Miss Eula sat at the head of the table and she said, "Oh, baby dears, I can die happy now. And after I'm dead on Chicken Sundays, I want you to boil up some chicken bones, gravy and all, and pour it over my grave. So late at night when I'm hungry, I can reach right out and I can have me some." And then she rolled her head back and laughed from a deep place inside. Winston, Stewart, and I are all grown up now. Our old neighborhood has changed some, yet is still familiar too. The freeway rumbles over the spot where Mr. Kadinsky's shop once stood. I think of him often and his glorious heads. We lost Miss Eula some time back, but every year we take some chicken soup up to the Mountain View Cemetery and do just as she asked. And sometimes when we're especially quiet inside, we can hear singing. Her voice sounds like slow thunder and sweet rain. One thing about Patricia Polacco is that she always writes about things that she knows. The Miss Eula, Winston, and Stewart were her friends from when she was young. And Mr. Kadinsky's hat shop, all that was true. Making the Pisanki eggs, all of that was things that happened to her in her life. I have also a video that you can watch, another story called Rashenka's Eggs, and this is where she got the idea of making a story with the Pisanki eggs, because where she lives right now, there's a whole bunch of geese that fly, and she wanted to write a story about the beautiful geese and the Pisanki eggs. So if you want to read more by Patricia Polacco, you can read or listen to Rashenka's Eggs. And also, I have a video that I will post with Patricia Polacco making the Pisanki eggs in the traditional Ukrainian way. I find it very fascinating. It takes a long time to do. They're absolutely beautiful. So I hope you guys had a great holiday, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye.